Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to be going over the UFC's bad guys, heels, whatever you want to call them. I'm going to be going through, I say the history of the UFC, but the problem is, if I were to do that, there's going to be the majority of this list from the beginning of the UFC. And to be completely honest with you, if we're going to be talking about like the beginning, like your Ken Shamrock era, I'm going to be bringing up some people that you guys have absolutely no clue about. So I'm going to try to keep it semi-modern. However, you are going to see some Tito Ortiz's and, of course, your Chael Sonnen, because like you can't bring up bad guys unless you're bringing up people with bad guy literally in their brand. And with that out of the way, let's get started. Number one, we're going to start with Conor McGregor. You may think I'm going to start out strong here. However, I think Conor McGregor's bad guy heel tactics, I think, hit its absolute peak with, I would say, Jose Aldo. Don't get me wrong, I'm aware that he was a big heel against Eddie Alvarez and RDA, which is a huge missed opportunity. I'm still kind of salty that we never got to see Conor McGregor versus RDA, but I mean, I kind of get it. But I would say after the Eddie Alvarez fight, the heel tactics in MMA kind of shrunk a little bit. He kind of had that nice guy era against Cowboy Cerrone, which I'm going to be real with you, I was not the biggest fan of. Like, let's be real here. Conor McGregor not playing the heel is like Khamzat Chimaev not fighting frequently. The only reason you were famous is because you did that thing. I don't care what anybody else says in the comment section. But Conor McGregor, if we're going to go full-on career, he is definitely going to be in our A-tier bad guy heel, okay? Like, he is a guy that so many UFC fighters, young UFC fighters, and fans of the sport, when you ask them, who inspired you, who inspired your character, these bad guy antics, they all will say Conor. Even fighters that are on this list, they're never going to say it. They 100% are inspired by Conor McGregor. Next up is Jorge Masvidal. Jorge Masvidal was inspired by Conor. He'll never say it. I know that's true. I mean, listen, I believe Conor showed him how much money he could make. I know for a fact he was inspired by Chael because there was drama when Masvidal and Chael Sonnen had beef. Chael kind of, like sowed some receipts and was like, oh yeah, and all those times that you used to message me in the beginning of your career complaining that they wouldn't promote you, so you would ask me for advice how to play a character. Yeah, maybe I'll just, post those to the public. Chael ain't lying. Like Masvidal's early career, he wasn't just like not at the super high level of MMA, but he also like personality-wise wasn't the best, okay? Him and Colby discovered their character when their career was about to end. That's the unfortunate part about it. And Masvidal, I'll say this right now, I do believe Masvidal is the most successful journeyman in the history of the sport. I really do believe that. Outside of maybe one other person that's going to be on this list, and I think we'll get to that in a second. I believe Masvidal is one of the most successful journeymen in the sport purely because he had beef with Kamaru. He should not have gotten a rematch. He did reasonably well in the first fight on short notice, and other than that, like, that was pretty much it. Masvidal, as far as being a bad guy, honestly, high B tier. Like, let's think about this. He had beef with Colby. He had kind of like a childhood disagreement with Kamaru. He assaulted Leon Edwards, and nothing came of it. I would say the Ben Askren was probably the funniest one, but just because not a lot of people liked Ben Askren, I'm going to say high B tier. He just wasn't that big. If you know what I'm saying. Like, when I mean by that big, it wasn't like he had the presence of a Conor or other people on this list. Next up, Colby Covington. Okay. Colby Covington, I might make another video on this about, like, the perks of playing the heel and the downsides of playing, like, the pros and cons of playing the heel in MMA. Because it is a very interesting concept that we are in a sport where playing the bad guy financially is one of the best things that you could do. Like, the more you think about it, the more it's kind of a weird thing. Vince McMahon, when the UFC was first starting, he said, the reason I believe the UFC will fail is because how difficult it is to build up a character. And to be fair, I mean, bro's playing a different character now, but he's not wrong. The UFC got big when we had these Conor McGregors and Ronda Rouseys, like, running the sport. I think he was right with the characters. Colby Covington took that to a different avenue. Colby Covington, in terms of a character, is probably one of the biggest, like, best moves by any MMA fighter ever. Not the best, but I mean, bro built a career off being a dick. Like, not just that, he built a career off having beef with Kamaru Usman. Like, listen, I like Colby in the way that it is kind of crazy that he went from being like a mild-mannered guy that he was like the American Bilal Muhammad for a while. And then puts on a character that is so obviously a character but gets marketed into his persona that he builds an entire career off of it. I do respect that level of dedication to your art to lose yourself in it. But at the same time, it is also kind of an annoying character. Like, it was funny. The politics stuff just kind of got weird to me. Like, it was kind of like, okay, you went from being like, ain't nobody gonna talk shit to me, to I'm Trump's little purse pet. Like, that's what it struck me as. I know this might be blasphemous. He's either going to be low A tier, like an A- or a B+. I think he's more successful than Masvidal. But I'm going to say like a low, probably an A- in all honesty. Next up, Sean Strickland. Actually, I'm moving Colby to B+. Sean Strickland's an A tier, dude. Strickland is a superstar. And the craziest part about it is I don't think he's playing the heel. I just think this is how he is. Like, where I respect Colby for losing himself in the character, Strickland earns my respect purely because, bro, nobody is going to say the stuff that you say. Like, even if you don't agree with what he says and you think he's just being edgy for the sake of being edgy, bro is saying some stuff that I don't think you could pay people to say. And I respect that. Like, it is an entertaining novelty, but I don't think he views it as a novelty. I just think this is how he is. Like, he reminds me of that one edgy friend that you can't bring around your other friends, okay? Like, he's the one dude in the friend group that you're like, oh yeah, no, he's cool. And then everybody else is like, brother, he threatened to end my life. Like that's what Strickland gives off. To me, is an A tier. Dude, he's a bigger star than O'Malley. Numbers-wise, he brings in... Like, I want you to think about this. If I told you a year ago that we would be talking about Sean Strickland as the next big superstar in MMA, and that the UFC is actually talking about giving him a chance to do a rematch on UFC 300 because there's no other options, and Strickland vs. Dricus is projected to do better numbers than Israel vs. Dricus unless we do it in UFC Africa, you would think I was crazy. But Strickland, just by talking about random things and being entertaining, has eclipsed Colby Covington in his own fan base. Like, that's wild. Dude, Strickland fans nearly bullied John Anik out of his job. Like, granted, do not bully somebody out of their job. We all love John Anik. But at the same time, bro, I respect the grind. He is going to be in our A tier. Next up is John Jones. I know I'm not the only one to say this, but like, John Jones and Colby Covington, actually, no. Yeah, no, I'm not going to say that. What I was going to say is people will talk about Colby Covington like he's a good dude that was forced to be a bad guy, and John Jones is a bad guy that was forced to be a good dude. I don't think Colby Covington's a great guy. Like, I would have to meet him in person to be like, oh, is he an actual... Everybody who meets him in person says he's a good dude, but at the same time, it's kind of like... There's a certain level of saying really bad things that I'm like, are you actually playing character here? Like, there's some times where there's some raids in Colby that I'm like, bro, you might need to see a shrink. John Jones is not a great guy. Like, it does always amaze me the amount of people that will stand on a hill and defend John to the bitter end. It's like, listen, I'm not saying he's not one of the best MMA fighters of all time, but if you're really trying to say to me, oh, he's not a bad dude, he just has problems, it's like, okay. If I describe a human being just by, like, the stuff that he did that we know of, you would think he was a menace to society and should be kicked from the sport. Like, brother's done some things. As far as being successful as a heel, I'm just going to say it right now, he wasn't wildly successful until I would say the Daniel Cormier fights were definitely, honestly, just for the sake of Jones has been a part of the UFC for so long, and Masvidal was able to eclipse him in terms of fame that quickly. Like, think about this. Masvidal getting that knee on Ben Askren actually made him a bigger star than Jon Jones. A lot of people, listen, Jon Jones was not the UFC's biggest star for a very long time. Like, there's leaked messages between the Fertitta brothers and Dana White talking about Jones's future, because Jones said he didn't want to fight Gustafsson a second time. And there's something, I'm going to try to get the quote right off the top of my head, but you can look this up. Dana White said, "We need to let this punk know that we don't need him, or he's going to screw us over more than he already does." That's not somebody that is relying on you like you're Conor McGregor. Like, Conor McGregor's a bigger star than Jones, but I would argue Masvidal at his height was a bigger star than Jones off just playing the bad guy. Jones right now is the biggest he's ever been. There's a lot of new fans that are coming in here that are like, "Oh, Jones was always a star." No, he wasn't. Jones was never this big of a star. When the UFC became mainstream, Conor McGregor eclipsed. People found out about John because of Conor. Like, that's a crazy thing to say, but at the same time, it's true. Next up, Henry Cejudo, D tier. D tier bad guy. He is the cringe king. Like, here's the thing. It's his brand. At the same time, it doesn't make it good. Okay? The cringe king thing is funny. You're not... If we're going to judge it off being a bad guy, he's not a bad guy. Like, I think Cejudo is... I actually think Cejudo seems like actually a pretty cool dude. Like, I disagree with some of his takes a little bit, but at the same time, he seems like a really good dude. And there's some people on this list that I'm like, I don't even know if you're a great person. I'm going to put you in D tier. Even in his career, him playing the bad guy hasn't worked out the best. Never forget, Cejudo had 2 belts, threatened retirement, and the UFC said, "All right," retired, and then they really tried to stop him from coming back the second time. Ilia Topuria. Now, Ilia Topuria has been recently playing the heel to an almost, like, supernatural degree. Bro is peak level either delusion or confidence. Bro has made a movie about him getting the belt before he actually got a belt. Has marketed himself as the champion. Bro has been paying for professional edits of himself with the belt. Talking about how he's going to fight Conor McGregor after beating Volkanovski and saying that he's going to make Conor McGregor rich again. I'm not kidding. He's not. He said that he will never let Max Holloway, Brian Ortega, or Yair Rodriguez ever fight for a belt again in their career if he becomes champion. Saying that O'Malley... And this, I would actually argue, there might be some truth to this, saying that he's a bigger star than O'Malley. Ilia is ridiculously big in Spain. That's all I'm going to say. Like, the UFC has alluded to going to Spain if Ilia becomes champion. Like, I think they're aware that Ilia does have numbers behind him, but we'll see if that translates to pay-per-views. As far as being the bad guy, I'm going to say C tier purely because I want to see more of this. It's only been this fight that he's been playing the bad guy. And here's the thing. Daniel Cormier has gone out and said that if Ilia Topuria, after saying everything that he said, and beats Volkanovski, he will have a meteoric rise in fame akin to somebody like Conor McGregor beating Jose Aldo. I don't think it's going to be that crazy. I do think it's going to be similar to that, because imagine this. I think Ilia wins. I don't think he's going to win like this, but imagine this. Ilia Topuria comes in. Crowd is booing him, dude. Comes in. Flatlines Volkanovski in the second round. Like, hook to the body, overhand right, like his one fight that he had at 155. Like, the visual of a young 26-year-old Ilia Topuria flatlining the go-to featherweight in Alexander Volkanovski. That would make you a star if you said nothing, but the fact bro has 22.2 million followers on Instagram and gets the traction that he does, he would be a superstar if he did it. And for that reason, if he wins, he goes up to a mid-B tier. If he loses, he goes down to D tier. I'm going to say C tier right now. Israel Adesanya. Yeah, no, Israel Adesanya's. I don't mean a bad guy like he's actual bad guy. In all honesty, he seems like a decent dude. I think Jones is a worse dude than him. But as far as playing the bad guy, he does do. Honestly, yeah, C tier. Actually, I might even put him below Ilya. Because he'll play the bad guy if he knows that he can out-talk shit you. Let me explain. He'll play the bad guy to Marvin Vettori. A lot of people forget about this. He got on Robert Whittaker for representing Australia when he's from New Zealand. Even though Israel Adesanya represented China, coming from Nigeria and New Zealand, and didn't even represent New Zealand until his second fight in the UFC. He had a thick Nigerian accent the first 2 fights of his career. And you can still find the interview. Bro really said that he had to go to a well for water when he lived in Nigeria, when his family was known to have servants in their house at that time. His family was rich in Nigeria. They did not have a ton of money when they went over to New Zealand. He got on Robert Whittaker for representing a different country when you represented 3. Like, I don't normally have a problem with it. The problem that I have is the hypocrisy of it. But Israel Adesanya will play the bad guy when he knows he can out-talk shit you. Did the same thing to Alex Pereira when Alex Pereira can't speak English. He didn't do it to Sean Strickland because he knew Strickland could mollywop him on the mic. Did it to Drickus because he didn't think Drickus was good at talking shit, but it turns out Drickus is actually pretty charismatic. Jan Blachowicz. Talk shit to Jan. Jan is not the best at... You see what I'm saying? He also talked a lot of crap to John Jones until Israel couldn't become champion of light heavyweight, and then all of a sudden they're best buds. That's all I'm saying. Israel will talk shit when he feels like he could beat you, but the moment he thinks that you can beat him in smack talk or can't speak English as your first language, then he's going to try to bully you. C tier, ineffective. Next up is Michael Bisping. Okay, a lot of people forget this. Michael Bisping was like the original Sean Strickland. I'm not kidding. When Strickland was coming up, when he first went up to middleweight, when he saved his head, people called him the American Bisping. A lot of people forget that because Bisping was the original, would say some stuff that you're like, bro, what is this dude saying? That was his marketing appeal. He, fairly good fighter. In all honesty, probably wasn't the best middleweight champion. I would actually say he's probably second to worst middleweight champion. His beef with Luke Rockhold is... I'm not kidding. The Michael Bisping versus Luke Rockhold is the reason that they don't do post-fight press conferences with everybody at the same table. Look up Luke Rockhold versus Michael Bisping post-fight press conference, and you will understand why they did it. Because literally every single time, Luke Rockhold would be like, yeah, man, sometimes you're unlucky. You could hear Michael Bisping on the other side. It's got unlucky, I knocked you the fuck out. It's just I know I'm better than him. It's you're not better than me, I knocked you out. Every single thing Luke Rockhold would say, you could just hear Michael Bisping screaming at him through the microphone. It's but I knocked you out, though. Until, they nearly got into another fight backstage. That's the reason why they don't do that anymore. And for that reason... And Michael Bisping is as big of a star and is as recognizable as he is because of that. I'm actually going to say his bad guy aura carried him farther. John Jones hasn't done... He's a bad dude that will play the bad guy when he can't hide it against somebody like Daniel Cormier. But outside of that, he won't. Michael Bisping trash-talked just about everybody. Michael Bisping actually out-trash-talked Chael Sonnen at one point. There's a point where Chael Sonnen has the belt in the second Anderson Silva fight. They were fighting on the same card, and I'm sorry if I get some of this wrong, but I know this interview exists. Chael Sonnen said something to Michael Bisping, and Michael Bisping just looks at him as just you're calling me a fake champion when you literally bought a belt off the UFC website. Such him out. Michael Bisping, in his prime, was really good. Dominic Cruz, it's not that he's similar to John in terms of how they conduct their smack talk. He's not going to say anything that's false. He's just going to bring up stuff that's just true. The way he smack talked TJ Dillashaw, the way he smack talked Henry Cejudo, Cody Garbrandt. None of what he said was false, but he was just wrong when it came to actual demonstrating it. Cody, nobody would have thought Cody was going to have the performance that he did, but every single thing Dominic Cruz said to TJ Dillashaw and Cody Garbrandt was just objectively true. His charisma and him being the bad guy in those fights, I'm telling you this right now, and his ability to speak carried him to a job working for the UFC. And if you can't tell, if you purely speaking and being the bad guy carries your career, you're automatically guaranteed a B tier. I would argue John, even with the little smack talk that he did later on in his career, is still bigger than Dominic Cruz, but Dominic Cruz deserves a mention. TJ Dillashaw. This one's difficult because I'm going to put him high C tier purely because he deserves an honorable mention. But I think he's slightly worse than Dominic Cruz, but slightly better than Cejudo when it comes to shit talking. And I think that gets him in that spot. Next up is Ian Gary, D tier. D tier. He has the smack talk that I hate the most because let me tell you some Ian Gary smack talk. Jeff Neal, he had his wife make a t-shirt with the mugshot of Jeff Neal. And I'll tell you this right now, I think a lot of the smack talk that he does is kind of like written up for him. Like, I've seen too many interviews of him looking at a piece of paper that I'm like, 100% you have your trash talk written for you. Like, 100% that's what's happening right now. Like, said it to Jeff Neal. But then Colby Covington, somebody who can actually, like, talk shit really well, all of a sudden he's going to start threatening a cease and desist, or I'm going to threaten you with defamation of character. Apparently did it to Lucas Tracy. There was something with MMA Guru. There was definitely something with Sean Strickland. You can't be a bad guy if you're threatening a cease and desist when somebody smacks talks you back. Like, I am hoping he tries to play the bad guy against Jeff Neal again, because now we're at a point that you either have to be nice to everybody or you have to lean into what made you notable. I think you already know what I'm about to say. But, like, the fact is it's hard to talk shit to people when I could just say, like, just look up an Ian Gary video. Like, it's actually good luck winning a smack talking session if you can just get buried by anybody if somebody calls you one word. And if they do that, you're going to threaten defamation and say that they're spreading hate speech and misinformation. Like, this is combat sports, dude. We're getting into a cage to fight each other halfway to death, but you're going to threaten me with a defamation? Like, that's wild. Next up, Khamzat Chimaev. Yeah, Khamzat Chimaev's a bad dude, like a bad guy. I think that's the character he's playing. It's hard to rate him because he speaks English as his second language, I believe. It might be his third. And he does speak English relatively well, but at the same time, he's not to, like, our B tier. Like, his career was made because he's objectively good at wrestling. But, like, his smack talk is like, I smash him tomorrow, little boy. Like, the Dagestani fighters would do very well with a voice coach and having lines pre-written for them. That's all I'm saying. Like, Bilal Muhammad, I know he's not really Dagestani, but I know Bilal Muhammad, for example, would do very well if he could talk shit. Islam Makhachev is actually kind of good. Like, get him a little bit more charismatic, he could become a star. Khamzat Chimaev speaks some better English. You could do better. I'm actually going to say Khamzat Chimaev, as far as playing the bad guy, is probably under Israel Adesanya. But here's the difference, though. Israel will only smack talk people he knows that he can out smack talk. Khamzat Chimaev will smack talk everybody. Doesn't matter if they're bigger, smaller, same weight as him, speak better English. Bro is doing this in a second language. You do earn some respect from me for talking shit in a second language. Now, speaking of second language, Paulo Costa. Paulo Costa's Twitter carries the entirety of his career. And yes, I'm going to say a bad guy. He was a bad guy against Israel Adesanya, and I think that's what got him his initial notoriety. But his Twitter game revived his career. I can't make that up. I'm going to say this right now. I'm going to put him above TJ Dillashaw, beneath John. I'm going to say he's going to be on a low B tier, purely for the reason that Paulo Costa, if Paulo Costa didn't have a Twitter, he would be kicked from the UFC already. Like that, I do believe that's a fact. Paulo Costa would have been kicked from the UFC if he didn't have Twitter. Like, that's how hard it carries his career right now. Next up, I got a few OGs left over. We got Tito Ortiz. Tito Ortiz was like one of the first big trash talkers, and this is what I mean when I talk about, was he a better trash talker than John? I might actually have to put him at our Paulo Costa level for the reason that near the tail end of his career, it's hard to talk shit when the CTE levels is so high that you can't string together a coherent thought. Like, he has that famous quote of, like, how often do you train a week? On Monday, I train 7 days. On Tuesday, I train 6 days. And then that night, I train 5 days. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, look up Tito Ortiz CTE, and you're gonna see some funny stuff. Also, is that a tier list that you guys want to see? UFC fighters in the levels of CTE that they have? Go in the comment section and tell me. But I'm actually going to say, as far as prime, he probably was at that Paulo Costa level of terms of smack talk. Oh, there's another thing. So this is the difference of playing the heel in the pioneer generation of fighters, pioneer to golden age, to this generation. Everybody has to be mildly charismatic. Back in the day, you had to play a character. That's why you had, like, the Iceman Chuck Liddell, the Huntington Beats bad boy Tito Ortiz, the bad guy Chael Sonnen. Like, they played it much closer to WWE levels of smack talk, when now it's just about being based. Renato Moicano, speaking of being based, Renato Moicano is quickly becoming one of my favorite lightweights to not watch fight, speak. He is so funny. I just watched his interview he did with MMA Guru. First off, Renato Moicano speaks English as a second language and conducted a better interview than most MMA YouTubers. I'm just going to say it. He did better than most MMA YouTubers when they have to conduct interviews with actual fighters, speaking a second language. Need I say more? Renato Moicano put himself on the map because he can talk shit. I hope he gets that Patty fight. We have too many B tiers. Okay. I'm going to move somebody up the A tier so we can have some space here. How about this? I'll put Colby Covington bottom of A tier purely because at the heights of Colby Covington... Yeah, fine. Heights of Colby Covington, A tier. Renato Moicano is going to be B minus. I just didn't feel right putting him at C plus. Purely because, dude, here's the thing. Ilya. I know somebody's going to say, how is Ilya down here? Okay. Ilya is objectively really good. Renato Moicano has, I'm just going to say it, boring fights. The Drew Dober fight was pretty boring. People remember that fight just because of how good the post-fight speech was. If that's pretty impressive. I'm going to put you B minus. There we go. Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar was like, honestly, yeah, Brock Lesnar is going to be at our high B tier. Bro, he was an actual WWE wrestler. Like, of course he's going to be good at smack talking. The era that he was in, the division that he was in, it was perfect. He is still, I believe he is the biggest star in heavyweight ever to this day. Like, I don't even think John right now is at the level that Brock Lesnar was as compared to everybody else. Like, the UFC has a very unique problem because the heavyweight division in other combat sports is the most popular. Not the most skilled, the most popular. But in the UFC, the heavyweight division, I would argue, is not just one of the weakest divisions skill-wise, but also one of the weakest divisions pay-per-view-wise. They just don't have stars right now, and Brock Lesnar was the star of stardom at heavyweight. And maybe it's because if you're 6'5" and you're 250 pounds, built like you've been eating corn and grain for the entirety of your life, you probably don't have a great personality because you don't have to talk very often. And maybe these later people got bullied enough that they had to become charismatic and funny to stop the bullying. I think that's part of it. But yeah, I'm going to say B+, not... Okay, just because he's the biggest star in heavyweight, fine, I'll put him A-. I think that's fair. Paddy Pimblett. Paddy Pimblett's a bad guy now. Like the Tony Ferguson fight. Like, here's the thing. Best case scenario, Paddy Pimblett has to play the heel. And I don't even think that's a bad idea. I think Paddy Pimblett playing the heel is his best bet. I actually think Cejudo's a bit more charismatic than Paddy. The thing is there are some people that will go in the comment section saying, you're super You're super hating on Paddy Pimblett. Paddy Pimblett's mad, underrated right now. Everybody's hating on him. I have said it before, let me say it again. I don't think Paddy is bad, but I think he's in a division that just objectively does everything that he does, but better. If you think that Paddy Pimblett, do you think Paddy beats Arman Tsarukyan? No? Okay. Do you think Paddy beats Drew Dober? No? Okay. Do you think he beats Renato Moicano? Maybe. Probably not, though. I would actually choose Renato Moicano to win. Got gassed in a third-round fight with Tony Ferguson. Like, he's good. He'd be good if he was at 170 and could magically get the build for that division. 155, bro, is going to get absolutely smoked. If I had to make a little prediction on how his career goes, and I've already done it in other videos, I expect Darren Till 2.0. He's going to go up a division, look a little fat, and then lose before he even gets into the top 10 rankings. That would be my prediction on Paddy Pimblett's career. Next up is Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley is probably one of the worst superstars at smack talking I have ever seen in my entire life. The only reason he's on this list is if you look up UFC trash talkers, UFC heel, it shows you a picture of Sean O'Malley and Aljamain Sterling, and I had to genuinely think for a second which one was the heel. But I think they meant O'Malley just because he's more popular. O'Malley, like, little tip. If you're going to talk shit, make it charismatic. Or just do the thing you did against Petr Yan and talked about, I'm going to embarrass you at Abu Dhabi. It's like, I'm going to beat you, dude. I'm a better striker than you, dude. Like, you have another problem. You got 10-7 by Strickland. Like, you got 10-7 by Sean Strickland. In my mind, it's effective, but at the same time, if you have to resort to talking about Strickland's childhood because you're getting 10-7 so bad in front of your fans, you've already lost. Like, genuinely. Like, Drickus made a smart move to do that because, let's be real here, I don't think Drickus is going to... I don't think anybody out-smack talks on Strickland purely because outside of bringing up his childhood, there is nothing else that works on him. Yeah, no, he's not... Cheeto speaking English as a second language is better at smack talk than O'Malley is. I would actually say O'Malley is at the same level as Henry Cejudo in terms of talking shit. Like, for real. Next up is Alex Pereira. I don't have a lot to say about Alex Pereira, but he was brought in as the bad guy to Israel Adesanya. He was brought in to give Israel Adesanya a payday. They fast-tracked him to the title, but didn't expect him to be as good as he was. So when he did beat Israel, they decided, oh shit, we gotta schedule a rematch because we pay Israel too much money to put him in anything other than a main event. That's why they tried to give him another rematch when he lost to Strickland. They normally would not do that. So Alex Pereira loses to Israel Adesanya, and there's a few things that happened, but I believe the biggest reason why they didn't want to do a trilogy is say Alex Pereira beats Israel, then you can't do an immediate rematch, and now you're in a situation where Israel has to fight a number one contender. So they move Alex Pereira. They probably give Alex Pereira a really good contract because they tend to do that to people that are going into a title fight. They give him a new contract. They bring him up to Jan Blachowicz, offer him a good payday. He beats Jan. Nobody thought he was going to do that. Beats Yuri Prohaska. I thought he was going to do that. And now he's a star because they brought him in to be a bad guy. But as far as being a bad guy, he's not. Here's the thing. Actually, I'm going to put him above Paddy. O'Malley can at least speak English relatively well. Pereira, think about this. Before somebody goes in the comment section like complaining about Pereira's placement. Pereira's only said a handful of English words, and him saying, Israel Adesanya, come to daddy. That puts him above Paddy Pimblett and Ian Gary. That is how, if he could speak English, dude, Pereira would run the UFC. Give him one, bro won 2 belts in 2 years, give him 6 months with English, he runs the UFC. And finally, I saved him for last for a reason, Chael Sonnen. At the beginning of the video, I said Jorge Masvidal is the best journeyman to ever fight in the UFC. I took that back. Chael Sonnen is the best journeyman, and not just boxing. WWE, wrestling, MMA, he's the most impressive journeyman in the history of combat sports. Like, think about this. Name another UFC fighter that immediately after ending their MMA career becomes, like, one of the most recognized faces in MMA. Like, the Chael Sonnen YouTube channel, consistently, him just talking about random stuff, him yapping for 15 minutes about somebody that he saw in a hallway, is so charismatic that it will consistently outperform, and I'm not kidding with these stats, 95% of all other MMA YouTubers in this space. Their videos are outperformed by him talking about something that happened in a hallway. He is the best yapper in MMA history. Him at his height, bro, he was bullying Anderson Silva. He still clowns John Jones, and Jones had to block Chael Sonnen on Twitter because he kept on getting 10-7'd. Okay? Like, he's that good. I believe, whether they want to admit it or not, and some of them have admitted it, like Jorge Masvidal said he used to, well, Jorge Masvidal didn't say it, but they used to ask Chael Sonnen for tips on building a character and getting more notoriety in the space. He 10-7 Tito in his prime. This wasn't CTE Tito. This was the Huntington Beats bad boy 10-7'd him. When Chael Sonnen and Conor McGregor had a roast at a press conference one time, and Chael Sonnen destroyed him too. The only person that even Chael is like, oh, bro, I don't know, is Sean Strickland. He said Sean Strickland's one of the few people in MMA that, like, you probably can't out shit talk him. Even he admitted Strickland's one of the few people that you can't out shit talk. But I think Chael is far more charismatic than Strickland is. He is S tier trash talker. He is the original great trash talker, and I believe he is the catalyst of all trash talk in MMA. S tier. I think this is pretty good. Tell me what you think about tier list in the comment section below. This was a fun video to make. I have a few other videos that I got planned in the future. The Gracie lore video has already started. Like, research. I'm about like 10 to 20% through it. That's probably going to be an hour-long video. I got other tier lists that I got to work on. Daily MMA content on this channel. And I do got a few other ones that I just want to talk about. The pros and cons of being a heel in MMA. That's another one I'm working on. Not a tier list video, just me discussing like old YouTube content. If you want me to do something other than a tier list style video and you want me to go over something else, either message me on TikTok or go in the comment section below. Also have an Instagram. I don't plug that enough. There will be a link to there in the description down below. I don't know why I was missing that word. But thank you guys for everything. It is actually kind of crazy how much we've grown over the past week. 20,000 views in the past 48 hours. Doesn't sound like a lot, but at the same time, 14 days ago, I would be lucky to get 7,000 views over the course of 2 days. You guys have been helping me a lot. Thank you, everybody, for watching. With that out of the way, see y'all next time.